Have you ever met someone and instantly felt that you knew exactly what kind of person they were? Maybe you trusted them immediately, or maybe you sensed something was off, even though they hadn't said a single word. That feeling isn't magic. It's your brain picking up on tiny cues, body language, tone, expression, and energy, and making a quick judgment about who they are. But what if you could turn that instinct into a skill? What if you could train yourself to recognize the hidden signals people send every day, whether they want to or not? Imagine being able to tell when someone is nervous, when they're lying, when they're secretly excited, or when they're holding something back. Imagine being able to look past words and see the truth of what people are actually thinking and feeling. This is the promise of Patrick King's book, Read People Like a Book. Despite the title, this isn't about mind-reading, manipulation, or tricks. It's about sharpening your awareness of human behavior so that you can connect with others on a deeper level, protect yourself from deception, and move through social situations with confidence. Think about how powerful that could be. In your personal life, you'd know when a friend needs support, even if they say they're fine. In your career, you'd understand your boss, coworkers, or clients better, making you a stronger communicator and negotiator. In relationships, you'd recognize honesty, attraction, hesitation, or frustration without having to guess. These are life-changing advantages, and they come not from some secret formula, but from learning to see what has been right in front of you all along. Patrick King argues that every person is like a book, filled with chapters written in body language, micro-expressions, tone, and choice of words. Most people skim the surface and never really read. But if you learn the language, you can flip through those pages with clarity. You can discover the stories people are telling, even when they try to hide them. In this video, we're going to walk through the key lessons of Read People Like a Book. We'll explore the science of human behavior, the power of first impressions, the secrets of body language and facial expressions, the way speech patterns reveal truth, how to spot deception, and how to understand deeper personality traits. We'll also talk about emotional intelligence, because reading people isn't just about analyzing them, it's also about empathizing with them. By the end, you won't just hear Patrick King's ideas, you'll have a practical toolkit you can apply every day. You'll start noticing things you used to overlook. You'll recognize signals that once felt invisible, and you'll interact with people on a whole new level of awareness. So, let's begin our journey into reading people like a book. The first chapter starts with understanding the science of human behavior. To read people like a book, you first need to understand the science of human behavior. Every action, every silence, every movement of the eyes or hands, none of it is random. People are constantly communicating, even when they're not speaking. The key is learning to see these signals for what they are. Patrick King explains that human behavior has three main roots: biology, culture, and personal experience. When you combine these three things, you get the unique way each individual expresses themselves. Let's start with biology, specifically evolutionary psychology. Many of our reactions today are ancient survival mechanisms. When our ancestors faced danger, their bodies reacted instantly. Their hearts raced, their eyes widened, and their muscles tensed. These reflexes were passed down through generations, and they're still with us today. For example, when someone feels threatened or startled, they might unconsciously step back or raise their eyebrows. They're not thinking about it, it just happens. These automatic responses reveal more about a person's true state than their carefully chosen words. The second root of behavior is culture. Human beings are shaped by the norms, traditions, and expectations of the society they grow up in. Eye contact is a perfect example. In many Western cultures, steady eye contact is a sign of confidence and honesty. But in some Eastern cultures, too much eye contact can be seen as rude or aggressive. The same action can mean two completely different things depending on the cultural lens. This is why context is so important when you're trying to read someone accurately. The third root is personal experience. Every person carries a lifetime of conditioning that influences how they act today.
Someone who grew up in a nurturing home may naturally seem relaxed and trusting, while someone who faced constant criticism may appear guarded or defensive. Two people can respond to the same situation in opposite ways because their past experiences have trained them to see the world differently. So, how do we use this knowledge to actually read people better? The first step is to remember that behavior is communication. Nothing is meaningless. But you also have to be careful not to jump to conclusions too quickly. Patrick King emphasizes that single gestures can be misleading. Crossing arms might mean defensiveness, but it might also mean the person is simply cold. Looking away could signal dishonesty or just shyness. That's why the golden rule is to look for patterns. One clue by itself isn't enough, but if you see 3 or 4 signals pointing in the same direction, you can start to form a clearer picture. Imagine someone avoids eye contact, fidgets with their hands, and gives vague answers all at once. Putting together those signs strongly suggests nervousness or discomfort. Another essential concept is baseline behavior. Everyone has a natural way of being when they're relaxed. Some people always talk quickly. Others are naturally soft-spoken. Some use lots of hand gestures, while others barely move. To read someone effectively, you first have to observe their baseline. That way, when their behavior changes, you'll know it's meaningful. If a normally calm person suddenly starts tapping their foot and speaking faster, something has shifted in their emotional state. Think of it like a heart monitor in a hospital. The flat line tells you nothing. The spikes and changes tell you everything. In the same way, changes in baseline behavior reveal what's really going on inside. Finally, remember that people have both conscious and unconscious signals. Words are usually conscious. We think about what we say. But tone of voice, micro-expressions, and body movements are largely unconscious. They leak out without permission, and that makes them more honest. When someone's words and body language don't match, trust the body. It almost always tells the truth. So, what's the takeaway from this first section? Human behavior is not random. It is shaped by biology, culture, and experience. To read people accurately, you must consider context, look for clusters of signals, and compare behavior to a person's natural baseline. And above all, remember that the unconscious often reveals more than the conscious. Once you start seeing behavior in this way, the world looks different. Conversations become layered with hidden meaning. People reveal more than they intend. And you begin to realize that reading people is less about guesswork and more about careful observation. This foundation prepares us for the next step, understanding first impressions and snap judgments, and why those instant evaluations we make about others can be so powerful.
We've all heard the saying, "You never get a second chance to make a first impression." That saying sticks around because it's true. The very first few seconds of meeting someone can shape the way we see them for a long time afterward. And the same is true in reverse. People are making judgments about you almost instantly. Patrick explains that these snap judgments are not just social habits, they are rooted in survival. Our ancestors didn't have the luxury of spending days deciding whether someone was a friend or a threat. They had to make immediate calls based on appearance, posture, and behavior. Today, our lives are not usually at stake, but our brains are still wired to size people up quickly. So what exactly goes into a first impression? The first factor is appearance. This isn't just about what someone is wearing, though clothing does play a role. It's also about grooming, posture, and overall presence. Someone who walks in with neat clothes, good hygiene, and upright posture is instantly read as competent and confident. Someone who looks careless or messy might be read as unprepared or less reliable, even if that's not true. The second factor is body language. Long before we hear someone speak, we're watching how they carry themselves. Are they open, with relaxed arms and shoulders, or are they closed off, with crossed arms and a guarded stance? Do they make comfortable eye contact, or do they avoid it altogether? These small signals combine quickly into an overall feeling about who this person is. The third factor is tone of voice. Research shows that how something is said often matters more than the actual words. A warm, steady tone creates trust and likability. A monotone or rushed voice, on the other hand, can make someone seem disinterested or nervous. We pick up on tone instantly, even before our brains process the words. Here's where things get interesting. First impressions are sticky. Once your brain has formed an opinion of someone, it tends to cling to that opinion. This is because of confirmation bias. If you decide in the first 30 seconds that someone is arrogant, you'll notice everything they do that supports that judgment, and you'll ignore the things that contradict it. In this way, our first impressions become self-reinforcing stories we tell ourselves. That doesn't mean they're always right. In fact, they're often wrong. Someone who seems shy might be mistaken for unfriendly. Someone who's confident might be misread as arrogant. But accurate or not, those snap judgments shape our behavior toward others, which in turn affects how they respond to us. This creates a cycle that's hard to break. So how do we use this knowledge to read people better? The key is to slow down your own judgments. Instead of trusting your first impression blindly, treat it as a hypothesis. Ask yourself, what exactly did I notice that made me feel this way? Was it their clothing, their posture, their tone? Could there be another explanation? This small pause helps you avoid falling into the trap of bias. And what about making a strong first impression yourself? The formula is simple but powerful. Be present, be open, be consistent. That means smiling genuinely, standing with confidence, using a calm and warm tone, and making sure your body language matches your words. When your signals are aligned, people sense authenticity, and authenticity creates trust almost instantly. Patrick King also points out that first impressions don't only happen in person anymore. In today's world, they also happen online. The photo you use on your profile, the way you write your messages, even how quickly you respond, these all create impressions before you ever meet someone face to face. Just as much as body language in person, your digital signals tell a story. The final lesson is this: first impressions matter, but they are not destiny. Over time, people can and do update their views as they get more information. If your initial read on someone feels off, give them time to show more of who they are. And if you feel like you made a poor impression yourself, don't despair. Consistency and authenticity over time can always rewrite the story. In summary, first impressions form in seconds. They're based on appearance, body language, and tone of voice. They stick because of confirmation bias, but they're not always accurate. The smart reader of people learns to notice these instant impressions without being ruled by them. They use first impressions as a starting point, not a final judgment. The first impression is like the cover of a book. It may not tell the whole story, but it sets the stage for how the rest of the story is read.
If words are the surface of communication, then body language is the undercurrent that reveals what's really going on. Patrick King emphasizes that if you want to read people like a book, body language is one of the most reliable chapters you can learn to interpret. Why is body language so powerful? Because it's largely unconscious. People can choose their words carefully, but they rarely control every gesture, every micro-movement, or every shift in posture. These signals slip out automatically, revealing emotions even when someone tries to hide them. In fact, research shows that over half of communication is nonverbal. That means if you only listen to words, you're missing most of the story. So, what are the key aspects of body language to pay attention to? Let's break it down into several categories: posture, gestures, proximity, and touch. First, posture. The way someone holds their body can tell you a lot about their mindset. An open posture, shoulders back, chest open, arms relaxed, suggests confidence and comfort. A closed posture, arms crossed, shoulders hunched, body angled away, often signals defensiveness, insecurity, or discomfort. Pay attention not only to whether someone is open or closed, but also to whether their posture changes when certain topics come up. A shift from open to closed could mean that the subject hit a nerve. Second, gestures. Our hands often reveal what our words conceal. People who are comfortable and confident tend to gesture naturally as they speak, using their hands to emphasize points. Someone who hides their hands, fidgets, or clutches objects may be feeling nervous or guarded. Notice also the timing of gestures. When gestures match the rhythm of speech, it signals alignment and authenticity. But when gestures are out of sync, it can suggest hesitation or dishonesty. Third, proximity. How close someone chooses to stand or sit tells you about the relationship they feel they have with you. We all have what's called a personal space bubble. Strangers usually stay farther away, while friends and loved ones come closer. If someone consistently moves closer, they may be signaling trust, comfort, or even attraction. If they keep stepping back or maintaining distance, they may want to keep things more formal or guarded. Fourth, touch. Touch is one of the most powerful nonverbal signals, but also one of the most culturally dependent. A firm handshake may convey confidence in one culture, while in another, a bow is the norm. A pat on the back or a light touch on the arm can signal warmth, support, or familiarity. But unwanted or tense touch can signal dominance, discomfort, or an attempt at control. Again, context matters greatly here. Patrick King emphasizes that when you read body language, you should never isolate one gesture and declare it the truth. Crossing arms doesn't always mean defensiveness, just like scratching your nose doesn't always mean lying. Instead, look for clusters, several signals working together. For example, if someone crosses their arms, avoids eye contact, and angles their body away all at once, the combination strongly suggests they're feeling closed off. Another critical point is baseline behavior, which we discussed earlier. Some people naturally cross their arms often, and for them, it may not mean anything negative. That's why it's so important to compare their behavior now to their usual way of being. The meaning lies in the change, not the gesture itself. One useful trick is to watch for mirroring. When people are comfortable and connected, they often subconsciously mirror each other's body language. If you lean forward, they lean forward. If you smile, they smile back. Lack of mirroring or mismatched body language can suggest distance, disagreement, or disconnection. Body language also includes micro-movements, tiny, fleeting signals that last only a fraction of a second. For example, someone might quickly tighten their lips before smiling, or clench their fists for a split second before relaxing. These micro-movements are easy to miss, but they're often the most honest clues. So how do you practice reading body language in real life? Start by observing people in neutral situations, like in a cafe or during small talk. Notice their posture, gestures, and expressions when they're at ease. That gives you their baseline. Then, when the topic changes to something more sensitive, look for shifts. Does their body tighten? Do they lean away? Do they suddenly fidget? Each shift is a new line in the story. To summarize this section, body language is the silent channel of communication. It reveals confidence, comfort, tension, attraction, or defensiveness, often more reliably than words. Pay attention to posture, gestures, proximity, touch, and micro-movements. Always look for patterns and compare behavior to a baseline. And remember, when words and body language disagree, trust the body. Once you master body language, you'll be able to see beneath the surface of conversations. You'll notice what people are really feeling, not just what they're saying. And that skill leads us to the next chapter, decoding facial expressions, one of the most expressive and revealing forms of human communication.
The human face is one of the most expressive canvases in existence. In just a fraction of a second, the face can reveal emotions that words try to hide. Smiles, frowns, raised eyebrows, narrowed eyes. All of these are signals. And unlike body language, which can sometimes be ambiguous, facial expressions often cut straight to the truth. Patrick King explains that facial expressions are universal. No matter where you are in the world, a smile signals happiness, a scowl signals anger, and widened eyes signal surprise. These expressions are hardwired into us through evolution. A caveman who saw another caveman with a look of fear didn't need a translation. The message was clear. These universal expressions still guide us today, often more powerfully than spoken language. There are 7 core emotions that tend to show up most clearly on the face: happiness, sadness, anger, fear, disgust, surprise, and contempt. Each has distinct markers that you can learn to spot. Happiness is usually shown through the smile, but there's a difference between a real smile and a fake one. A genuine smile, also called a Duchenne smile, involves not just the mouth, but also the eyes. The corners of the eyes crinkle, creating what people call crow's feet. A fake smile usually only engages the mouth and the eyes remain flat. Sadness is often visible through drooping eyelids, a slight downturn of the lips, and a softening of the facial muscles. People who are sad often avoid eye contact, and their expressions appear heavy, as though the face itself carries a burden. Anger shows itself through narrowed eyes, flared nostrils, a clenched jaw, and tight lips. Sometimes the eyebrows draw downward and inward. Anger often comes with tension in the entire face, as if the person is trying to contain strong energy. Fear looks similar to surprise, but with more tension. The eyes widen, the eyebrows raise, and the mouth may open slightly. But unlike surprise, which is fleeting, fear lingers. The face looks alert, scanning for danger. Disgust is easy to spot because it literally looks like someone is smelling something bad. The nose wrinkles, the upper lip curls, and the eyes narrow. This expression is a natural reaction to avoid something unpleasant or harmful. Surprise involves raised eyebrows, widened eyes, and an open mouth. But surprise is usually short-lived. Within seconds, it morphs into another emotion, like happiness if the surprise is pleasant, or fear if it's not. Finally, contempt is shown by one side of the mouth lifting slightly, almost like a half smile, but one filled with disdain. It's the look people give when they feel superior to someone else. Now, here's where it gets even more fascinating. While these expressions are universal, people often try to hide them, especially emotions like anger, fear, or contempt. But emotions leak out in what psychologists call microexpressions. These are tiny flashes of genuine emotion that appear for just a fraction of a second before the person covers them with a more controlled expression. You might see a flash of anger before someone smiles politely, or a flash of fear before they say, "I'm fine." Microexpressions are incredibly valuable to notice because they reveal what someone is truly feeling beneath the mask. Training yourself to catch these brief flashes takes practice, but once you do, you'll gain insights that most people miss. Patrick King suggests paying attention not only to the expressions themselves, but also to when they appear. If someone shows fear or disgust the moment a certain topic is mentioned, that's a strong clue that the topic is emotionally charged for them. The timing of an expression can be just as revealing as the expression itself. Of course, context is always important. A wrinkled nose could mean disgust, but it could also mean the person just smelled something unpleasant. A wide-eyed look might signal fear, or it might mean they're surprised by good news. The key is to combine facial expressions with body language and the flow of conversation. To practice decoding faces, start observing people in everyday life. Watch interviews, movies, or even casual conversations in public places. Pause and ask yourself, what emotion is showing here? Does the face match the words being spoken? The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. To sum up this section, the face is a window into the emotions people often try to hide. Happiness, sadness, anger, fear, disgust, surprise, and contempt are the 7 universal expressions. Real smiles involve the eyes, fake ones don't. Microexpressions reveal hidden feelings in a fraction of a second. And while context matters, learning to read facial cues gives you an incredibly powerful tool for understanding others. When you can read faces, you can see the emotional subtext in every conversation. You'll know when someone is truly happy for you, when they're secretly uncomfortable, or when they're holding back their real feelings. And this skill sets the stage for the next chapter, listening to the power of words and how speech itself reveals what's inside. Up until now, we focused on the nonverbal side of communication, posture, body language, and facial expressions. But words themselves carry enormous weight too. What people choose to say, how they say it, and even what they avoid saying all give you clues about who they are and what they're feeling. Patrick King reminds us that words are never neutral. Every sentence is a reflection of thought, intention, and emotion. The first thing to notice is the choice of words. Pay attention to whether someone speaks in specifics or in vague generalities. A person who says, "I was at a cafe on Main Street around 3 o'clock sitting by the window," is different from someone who says, "I was out somewhere around town in the afternoon." Specific language suggests clarity and confidence, while vague language can suggest uncertainty, evasiveness, or a desire to conceal details. Another aspect is focus. Does the person talk mostly about themselves, or do they bring others into the story? Someone who constantly uses I may be self-focused, while someone who frequently says we may see themselves as part of a group. Neither is inherently good or bad, but it reveals how they see the world. Then there are patterns of honesty and dishonesty. People who are lying often distance themselves from the subject. Instead of saying, I didn't take the money, they might say, the money wasn't taken by me. Notice how the second phrasing sounds detached and awkward. Liars also tend to add unnecessary details, hoping to sound convincing, or they may repeat themselves more than usual. Tone of voice is another powerful clue. Words tell you the content of a message, but tone tells you the emotion behind it. A steady, calm voice signals confidence. A shaky or high-pitched voice often signals nervousness or stress. If someone's tone suddenly changes during a conversation, becoming quieter, faster, or harsher, it's a sign that the topic triggered an emotional reaction. Silence is just as telling as speech. When someone hesitates before answering, that pause might signal that they're choosing their words carefully, possibly to avoid telling the full truth. Repeated hesitations, stammering, or filler words like and can point to discomfort. On the other hand, some people naturally speak that way, which is why you always need to compare to their baseline. Patrick King also points out that contradictions between words and tone are especially revealing. If someone says, I'm really excited, but their voice is flat and dull, their true feelings probably don't match their words. When in doubt, believe the tone over the literal sentence. Beyond individual conversations, speech also reflects personality traits. Someone who uses a lot of positive, optimistic language usually has a more hopeful worldview. Someone who constantly uses negative words, complaints, or sarcasm may have a more pessimistic or defensive mindset. People who tell stories in a linear, logical way may be analytical thinkers, while people who speak in loops and tangents may be more intuitive or creative. The rhythm of speech is another subtle but important factor. Fast talkers may be excited, nervous, or simply used to rushing. Slow speakers may be thoughtful, cautious, or lacking energy. People who vary their speed, emphasizing certain words and pausing for effect, often come across as more engaging and confident. And then there's listening. Ironically, one of the best ways to read people through their words is to notice how much they let others speak. Someone who constantly interrupts or dominates the conversation may crave control or validation. Someone who listens attentively and asks questions usually values connection and empathy. The way people balance speaking and listening says volumes about their character. Here's a simple practice. The next time you're in a conversation, listen beyond the words. Ask yourself, are they being specific or vague? Are they self-focused or other-focused? Does their tone match their words? Are they rushing, hesitating, or adding unnecessary details? Each of these clues is like a breadcrumb leading you to their inner state. To sum up this section, words are more than just sentences. They reveal confidence, focus, honesty, personality, and emotional state. Tone of voice often matters more than the words themselves. Pauses, hesitations, and silences carry meaning too. And contradictions between what people say and how they say it are some of the clearest signals you can find. When you train yourself to listen on this deeper level, conversations stop being just exchanges of information. They become windows into the thoughts and emotions behind the words. And that skill prepares you for one of the most fascinating parts of reading people, learning to spot deception.
One of the most powerful skills you can gain from learning to read people is the ability to spot deception. After all, people don't always tell the truth. Sometimes they lie to protect themselves, to avoid conflict, to impress others, or to manipulate a situation. Whatever the reason, lies often leave behind clues. Patrick King explains that while there's no single gesture or phrase that proves someone is lying, there are consistent patterns you can learn to recognize. The first principle is that lying is stressful. For most people, telling a lie requires more mental effort than telling the truth. You have to invent details, keep your story straight, and manage your body language all at once. That pressure often leaks out in nervous signals. Watch for fidgeting, shifting in the chair, tapping feet, or playing with objects. These behaviors by themselves don't prove deception, but when they appear suddenly, right after a question, they're worth noting. Next, pay attention to inconsistencies. A liar's story often contains small contradictions. The timeline may not add up, or the details might change slightly when repeated. Honest people usually remember events consistently, while liars have to keep track of what they said before, and sometimes they slip. Language patterns are another giveaway. Liars often distance themselves from the lie by avoiding personal pronouns. Instead of saying, "I didn't eat the cake," they might say, "The cake wasn't eaten." Notice how the second version avoids "I." Liars may also overcompensate by adding unnecessary details, hoping to sound convincing. They might say, "I couldn't have been there because I was at the gas station, filling up my car, talking to the cashier, and I even bought a soda." The extra details are meant to distract, but they can make the story sound suspicious. Tone of voice is equally important. When someone lies, their tone may shift suddenly, becoming higher-pitched, quieter, or more hesitant. They might speed up, trying to rush through the lie, or slow down as they carefully choose words. A long pause before answering can also be suspicious, especially if it seems unnatural compared to how they normally talk. Facial expressions often reveal lies too, especially through micro-expressions. A person might say, "I'm happy for you," but a flash of contempt or jealousy crosses their face before they can hide it. Or they might claim they're calm, but their lips tighten and their eyes widen briefly. These quick signals often reveal the truth more than the words do. Another powerful clue is when words and body language don't match. If someone says, "I'm confident," but their shoulders are hunched and they won't meet your eyes, trust the body over the words. Similarly, if they deny being nervous but keep wringing their hands, their body is telling the real story. King also highlights the importance of baseline behavior here. Some people naturally fidget or avoid eye contact, even when telling the truth. That's why you can't jump to conclusions based on a single sign. The key is noticing changes from their usual behavior. If someone who normally speaks smoothly starts stumbling over words when answering a particular question, that change is a red flag. Another subtle sign is defensiveness. When people lie, sometimes they overreact to being questioned. Instead of calmly explaining, they might get angry, offended, or overly insistent. "Why would I ever do that? I can't believe you'd even ask." The intensity of their response can sometimes be more suspicious than the content. Of course, spotting deception isn't about catching people in every little white lie. It's about protecting yourself and understanding when the truth doesn't match the surface. Patrick King cautions against becoming paranoid. After all, not every nervous gesture means someone is lying. The real skill lies in seeing clusters of signals. Inconsistencies in story, nervous body language, mismatched tone, micro-expressions, and defensive behavior, all adding up to a bigger picture. To practice, pay attention during everyday conversations. If someone tells a story, notice if the details shift when they repeat it later. Watch for moments when body language contradicts words. Notice when someone pauses too long before answering, or when they add too many unnecessary details. Each clue is like a puzzle piece, and when several pieces fit together, you start to see the truth behind the mask. To sum up this section, lies are rarely perfect. They leak through in nervous gestures, inconsistent details, unusual language patterns, sudden tone shifts, micro-expressions, and defensive reactions. No single sign proves deception, but clusters of signs, especially when compared to someone's baseline, reveal far more than most people realize. When you can detect deception, you gain not only protection from being misled, but also a deeper understanding of human behavior. And once you can spot lies, the next step is to go beyond surface signals and begin uncovering personality traits, reading not just what people feel in the moment, but who they are at their core. So far, we've explored how to read people's immediate signals, body language, expressions, tone, and even deception. But reading people like a book goes deeper than momentary feelings. Patrick King reminds us that real understanding also means uncovering personality, the patterns of behavior that make someone who they are, not just what they're feeling in the moment. Personality is like the backbone of human behavior. Emotions change from day to day, but personality traits are more stable. When you learn to recognize these traits, you can predict how someone is likely to act, even in situations you haven't seen them in before. One of the simplest ways to get a sense of personality is to look at consistency. Ask yourself, how does this person usually behave across different situations? Someone who's always cautious, thoughtful, and slow to decide is probably more introverted and analytical. Someone who's consistently energetic, talkative, and quick to act is more likely extroverted and spontaneous. These patterns reveal core traits. Patrick King points to frameworks like the Big Five personality traits as useful guides. These traits are openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. You don't need to formally test people to see these traits. You can often pick them up by watching behavior. Openness shows up in curiosity. People high in openness ask lots of questions, try new things, and enjoy creative conversations. People lower in openness prefer routine, familiar topics, and sticking with what works. Conscientiousness is about discipline and reliability. Highly conscientious people show up on time, plan ahead, and pay attention to detail. Low conscientiousness often shows up in lateness, disorganization, or unfinished tasks. Extroversion is easy to spot. Do they thrive on social interaction, or do they prefer quieter settings? Extroverts tend to talk more, gesture widely, and seek stimulation. Introverts may be more reserved, observant, and thoughtful before speaking. Agreeableness reveals itself in kindness and cooperation. Agreeable people smile often, listen well, and avoid conflict. Low agreeableness shows up in bluntness, competitiveness, or a tell-it-like-it-is style. Neuroticism is about emotional stability. People high in neuroticism may show signs of worry, irritability, or frequent mood shifts. Those low in neuroticism tend to stay calm and steady even under stress. Once you start to notice these traits, you can better understand someone's motivations. For example, if you know a person is highly conscientious, you'll realize that missing a deadline stresses them deeply. If they're high in openness, you'll know they thrive when you introduce novelty or creative ideas. Beyond the Big Five, Patrick King highlights that everyday behaviors give personality clues. Look at how people spend their free time. Someone who reads widely, explores hobbies, or loves to travel likely values growth and learning. Someone who spends time on routines or familiar comforts may value stability and security. Pay attention also to decision-making. Do they decide quickly and intuitively, or slowly and logically? Do they rely on gut feeling, or do they need facts and evidence? Each approach says something about how they see the world. Another subtle clue lies in conflict. How do they react when challenged? Some people withdraw, some argue passionately, and others seek compromise. These reactions reveal not only their temperament, but also their deeper values, whether they prize harmony, truth, or independence. One important reminder is to avoid stereotyping. Just because someone is introverted doesn't mean they're shy, and just because someone is extroverted doesn't mean they're reckless. Personalities are complex blends, not simple labels. The key is to see the patterns without oversimplifying them. To practice reading personality, combine observation with curiosity. Notice patterns in how someone talks, behaves, and reacts across time. Then test your impressions gently. Ask them about their preferences, their goals, or their reactions to certain situations. Their answers will either confirm or refine your reading. The more you do this, the more you'll realize that personality reading isn't about putting people in boxes. It's about understanding the stable traits that shape their choices and relationships. When you know someone's personality, you can anticipate their needs, communicate in ways they'll respond to, and avoid unnecessary misunderstandings. To summarize, behavior in the moment tells you about emotions, but behavior over time tells you about personality. The big hive traits, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, are a useful lens for seeing deeper patterns. Everyday choices, decision-making styles, and conflict responses all give further clues. And while no one is just one thing, recognizing these patterns allows you to understand people on a level far deeper than surface impressions. By learning to see personality traits, you don't just read the current chapter of a person's story, you begin to understand the whole book. And that brings us to an even higher level of skill: emotional intelligence, the ability not only to read people, but also to connect with them in meaningful ways.
Up to this point, we've focused on observation, watching body language, listening to tone, spotting lies, and identifying personality traits. But Patrick King emphasizes that truly reading people isn't just about analyzing them like a detective. It's also about connecting with them, and that requires emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, often called EQ, is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage emotions, both in yourself and in others. It's what allows you to take all the signals you've learned to spot and use them to build trust, strengthen relationships, and respond in ways that actually help. Without empathy, the skill of reading people can turn cold or manipulative. With empathy, it becomes a tool for deeper human connection. The first element of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. Before you can accurately read others, you need to understand your own emotions. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Am I projecting my mood onto others? Sometimes we misread people not because their signals are unclear, but because our own emotions cloud our judgment. For example, if you're anxious, you might assume others are nervous too, even when they're not. Being aware of your own state helps you separate your feelings from theirs. The second element is self-regulation. This means being able to manage your reactions. Imagine noticing that someone is frustrated. If you immediately snap back defensively, you escalate the situation. But if you stay calm and respond thoughtfully, you defuse tension. Self-regulation allows you to use your awareness of others constructively, instead of letting emotions control you. The third element is social awareness, essentially the skill of reading other people's emotions accurately. This is where all the observation techniques we've discussed come together. You notice the subtle changes in tone, the flicker of an expression, and the shift in body language. But social awareness goes beyond spotting the signal. It means interpreting it with compassion. If someone looks tense, instead of thinking, "Gotcha, they're nervous," you think, "They might be under pressure. How can I support them?" The fourth element is relationship management. This is where empathy becomes action. It's not enough to know what someone is feeling, you need to respond in a way that strengthens the relationship. That might mean offering reassurance, giving space, asking thoughtful questions, or simply listening without judgment.
Patrick King stresses that empathy is at the heart of all of this. Empathy is the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to imagine what they're experiencing, and to respond with care. When you combine empathy with the skills of reading people, you gain not just insight, but influence. The kind of influence that makes people feel seen, valued, and understood. Here's a practical example. Suppose you're talking to a coworker who says they're fine, but you notice their smile is forced and their shoulders are tense. A purely analytical reader might think they're hiding stress, but an empathetic reader would go a step further. They're probably overwhelmed. Maybe I can lighten their load or simply let them talk about it. By responding with empathy, you turn observation into connection.
Another example, in a relationship, you might notice your partner giving short answers and avoiding eye contact. Instead of accusing them, "You're clearly upset with me," an empathetic approach would be, "I notice you seem quiet today. Do you want to talk about what's on your mind?" This approach invites openness instead of defensiveness. One of the most valuable practices for building empathy is active listening. This means giving someone your full attention, not interrupting, not thinking about your next response, but really absorbing their words, tone, and emotions. Active listening communicates respect and creates space for honesty. It's also important to practice perspective taking. Ask yourself, if I were in their situation, how would I feel? What pressures or fears might they be experiencing? This mental shift helps you move beyond your own viewpoint and see the world through theirs. Finally, emotional intelligence involves balance. It doesn't mean absorbing everyone else's emotions until you're overwhelmed. Healthy empathy allows you to connect with others while maintaining your own emotional boundaries. You can care deeply without carrying all their burdens yourself. To sum up this section, emotional intelligence transforms reading people from a skill into a superpower. It involves self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, and relationship management. At its core is empathy, the ability to see and feel from another's perspective. When you combine observation with empathy, you don't just analyze people, you connect with them. You make them feel understood, which is one of the greatest gifts you can give. This brings us to our final section, practical applications. How do you take everything we've covered, body language, tone, deception, personality, and empathy, and use it in everyday life to improve your relationships, career, and personal growth?
We've explored the science of human behavior, the signals of body language, the honesty of facial expressions, the power of words and tone, the clues of deception, the patterns of personality, and the depth of empathy. But knowledge alone isn't enough. The real question is, how do you apply all of this in everyday life? Patrick King emphasizes that reading people is not just a skill for special occasions. It's something you can practice daily, in small moments, until it becomes second nature. Let's start with personal relationships. Imagine being able to sense when your friend says, "I'm fine," but their slumped posture and flat tone tell you otherwise. Instead of taking their words at face value, you recognize their unspoken need and gently ask, "Are you sure? I'm here if you want to talk." That small shift builds trust and shows care. In family or romantic relationships, reading signals can prevent conflicts from escalating. You'll notice irritation before it turns into an argument, or sadness before it turns into distance, giving you the chance to respond with empathy. In your career, the benefits are just as powerful. Think about job interviews or presentations. By reading the interviewer's or audience's expressions and body language, you can adjust your delivery in real time. If you notice confusion, you clarify. If you see enthusiasm, you lean into it. As a leader or team member, being able to sense when colleagues are stressed, disengaged, or motivated gives you a huge advantage in managing dynamics effectively. Negotiation is another area where this skill shines. Whether you're discussing salary, closing a deal, or resolving a conflict, being able to spot hesitation, discomfort, or excitement allows you to navigate with precision. You'll know when to push, when to pause, and when to reassure. As Patrick King notes, negotiation isn't just about logic, it's about emotion, and emotions always leak through. Social life also transforms when you can read people. Meeting new people becomes easier because you're tuned in to their comfort level. You'll know when to give someone space, when to engage more deeply, and when to shift topics. People naturally feel drawn to those who make them feel seen and understood, and your ability to read signals makes you that kind of person. But how do you actually build the skill in practice? King suggests a few exercises. First, observation. Make a habit of watching people in everyday settings, cafes, parks, workplaces. Don't judge or label, just observe. Notice posture, gestures, expressions, and tone. Ask yourself, what emotion are they showing? Does their body match their words? This builds awareness. Second, practice active listening. In conversations, resist the urge to plan your response while the other person is talking. Instead, focus fully on them. Notice their word choice, their rhythm, and their pauses. Reflect back what you hear. It sounds like you're feeling. This not only improves your reading, but also strengthens connection. Third, test your impressions gently. If you think someone seems nervous, instead of assuming, you might ask, "How are you feeling about this?" Over time, you'll refine your accuracy, learning which signals are reliable for which people. Fourth, work on your own baseline awareness. Pay attention to how your body language and tone shift with different emotions. Notice your own microexpressions in the mirror or record yourself speaking. The better you understand your own signals, the easier it becomes to read them in others. And finally, remember that this is a skill built with patience. You won't suddenly become a human lie detector or a mind reader. But each day, as you notice one more signal, one more inconsistency, and one more hidden emotion, you get better. With time, the skill becomes effortless, like reading words on a page. To summarize, the practical applications of reading people are everywhere: personal relationships, professional settings, negotiations, and social interactions. You practice by observing, listening, testing impressions, and reflecting on your own signals. Over time, you'll notice that your awareness sharpens, your connections deepen, and your confidence grows. Patrick King's message is clear. People are like books. Most of us only skim the surface, flipping past the cover without really reading. But if you take the time to slow down, observe, and listen, you'll discover the stories written in posture, expression, tone, and behavior. These stories are always there, waiting for someone to notice. By practicing daily, you turn this awareness into a lifelong advantage. You protect yourself from deception, connect more deeply with others, and navigate the world with greater understanding. And perhaps most importantly, you give others the rare gift of being truly seen. That is the essence of reading people like a book.
We've now come to the end of our journey through Patrick King's Read People Like a Book. Together, we've uncovered the many ways people reveal themselves through body language, micro-expressions, tone of voice, word choice, and even the smallest inconsistencies between what they say and what they show. We've explored how to spot deception, how to understand personality, and how emotional intelligence allows us to connect with people on a deeper, more human level. The greatest lesson from this book is that people are constantly communicating, even when they're silent. Every gesture, every pause, every shift in posture adds a line to the story they're telling. Most of us rush past these details, distracted by our own thoughts or focused only on words. But if we learn to slow down and truly observe, the world opens up. Suddenly, conversations become richer, relationships become clearer, and hidden truths reveal themselves. It's important to remember that reading people is not about manipulation or judgment. It isn't about using insights as weapons, but about understanding. When you know how to read people, you're better equipped to show compassion, to avoid misunderstandings, and to communicate in ways that truly resonate. You protect yourself from lies, but more importantly, you create stronger bonds with honesty and empathy. Of course, no one is perfect at this skill. Even the most trained observers will misread signals at times. But perfection is not the goal. Progress is. Each time you notice a subtle shift in someone's tone, or catch the flicker of an expression, or sense the truth behind their words, you are practicing the art of reading people. And with practice, you'll find that what once felt invisible becomes second nature. Patrick King invites us to think of people as books. Most glance only at the covers, forming snap judgments and moving on. But the real stories are written in the pages, pages filled with subtle clues and layered meaning. By learning to read those pages, you discover depth, nuance, and truth that others miss. You see people not just for what they say, but for who they are. So as you carry these lessons forward, take them into your daily life. The next time you speak with a friend, a colleague, or even a stranger, give yourself a moment to observe more closely. Notice what's beyond the words. Ask yourself, what are they really feeling right now? Over time, you'll realize that every interaction is a chance to practice, to learn, and to connect more deeply. And perhaps the most valuable gift this skill offers is this. When people feel seen and understood, they open up, they trust, they connect.
And in a world where so many feel overlooked, the ability to make someone feel understood is nothing short of extraordinary. That is the essence of reading people like a book. Understanding others not just with your eyes, but with your mind and heart working together. If you found value in this summary and want to explore more life-changing books like this, make sure to like this video, share it with friends, and leave a comment with your thoughts or favorite insight. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful book summaries that can help you grow, connect, and understand the world in new ways. Thanks for staying with me till the end of this summary. Your time and attention mean a lot.